Hello again, everybody. We are double stacking, and the first thing that comes to mind when I'm talking about the differences between a Minuteman and a DA guy is pistols. So, the type of pistol that you carry truly comes down to three things: your personality, your capability, and your state. I currently live in an occupied territory state that has a magazine limit for its handguns. Now, it's not largely enforced in most of our counties because the Illinois PICA Act is basically unconstitutional as fuck and has been going through legislation after legislation. So, regardless, we still try to be law-abiding citizens, and it's something that you should be aware of because, for the most part, until things kick off, we are trying our best to just be your normal, average, law-abiding citizen. When things do kick off, obviously all rules go out the window. So if you just happen to have higher magazine capacity capability, you know, I ain't asking questions. I don't think you're going to ask questions either. But it's still a consideration that we need to have now. While we can still be overt and talk about these things before things kick off, and we need to be discreet, and we need to do things outside of traditional means. So, when it comes to a Minuteman mentality, I think the regurgitation of 9mm high capacity semi-auto striker fired pistols is like kind of a no-brainer. You know, I think for the most part, as a regular concealed carry, I don't see a problem with that at all. I would say, from my personal experience being in the military, having fired multiple different forms of handgun, I don't have a problem with 9mm. I'm not going to turn this into a huge caliber debate thing, but I don't like striker fired. And I do not shoot them nearly as accurate as I do a hammer-fired, all-steel firearm. So I actually liked the Beretta, for example. I shot very well with it. I shot expert with it when I was in the Navy, which I wouldn't say is that difficult, but it's still something to be stated. And I like the decocker. I like heavy triggers instead of an actual safety. I don't really have a big hand, but I have very long fingers, so it's hard for me to find gloves that fit me well. And for most handguns, compacts and Glocks with like an awkward grip angle are very difficult for me to shoot accurately. It's not to say I can't shoot them. It's just if I can't shoot accurately, why am I going to fucking use it? That should, the four fundamentals of firearms, which I'm not going to regurgitate because you should know them, obviously apply whether you're in a concealed carry law-abiding citizen role or whether you're a DAI Minuteman kicking shit off type guy. Those still apply. If I can't shoot a firearm that accurately, I'm not going to use that firearm. I don't care if you give it to me. I'm going to be like, hey, cool, thanks. I'll trade this for a Beretta. Like, why am I going to risk myself, yourself, and, not hit my fucking target? Or, worse, hit other people besides the target. I don't want to do that, right? But, obviously, if it's comfortable and capable for you, that's what you should use. I only have a couple of things that I would change being a DA guy. So, the first one is you should have multiple pistols. I think when it comes to a traditional Minuteman role, you should have one pistol, a very common cartridge, with as many magazines as you can possibly imagine, and you should train on that fucking handgun all the time. Makes sense. That's your combat sidearm. If it's not your combat sidearm, it is the only gun you're going to have on your person in case you are walking around and you have to potentially do a DA guy roll because you got spotted, or for home defense because you should be stashing your main weapons so that way if anyone ever comes kicking down your doors, they should be able to, hold evidence against you, right? So having a good handgun that runs reliably is very critical in a Minuteman role. I'm going to actually posit that if you're in a DA role, you're going to want to have multiple handguns, potentially in multiple calibers, at different price points. I feel you should have one combat-ready pistol. And that shouldn't be your main firearm. That should be your main house firearm. Your main, here's where I'm going to be firearm. I would imagine you're going to have to spend a couple of bucks on that. Get something that you shoot really fucking well. Get that red dot on there. Spend a couple $100. Maybe even up to $1,000. But when you're on a mission, I don't necessarily think that should be what you carry. So I'm going to talk about something that's going to ruffle a lot of feathers, especially for people who've been really trying to arm and prepare people. You're going to want to get a couple of cheap handguns. And there's a reason for it, right? You're going to need to get some Skies. You're probably going to need to get some High Points. You're probably going to need to get some Tauruses. You're going to need to get some shitty generic handguns that a lot of people just buy because they're cheap. They themselves are poor, and they're at that price point. You're going to want to try and find what's common in your area, which is obviously not going to be an easy thing to do, but it's easier to do at like going to a gun store and asking, hey, what's the most common firearm that people purchase here? Rather than, hey, shit's kicked off and now I got to go digging through bodies or, other less than stellar examples to find out what people are carrying. Try to find out what's common in your area, because when you do these direct action rolls, keep in mind it's 2024, okay? There is a lot more ways for you to get caught than there was back in 1776. I'm not going to go and say that every occupied area is going to have a police force, that's going to have a detective agency, that's going to be able to fucking find out exactly what caliber that came from which fucking gun like we do today. But there's actually no reason to think that wouldn't happen. Because what if your community just gets steamrolled completely, government gets changed out, and now you're part of, let's say, China/Russia communism, and you yourself don't like that, but your community's okay with it. Well, why wouldn't your police force, if slightly pressured, go and try to find out who you are, who shot that gun, what gun was it, who was it registered to? Now, obviously need to specify this here. I am not saying anything about illegally manipulating your firearm, disposing of serial numbers, any of that shit. You are going to have to do what you need to do when the shit hits the fan. Until that happens, you need to treat this as a law-abiding citizen, and you need to act accordingly. That's my disclaimer. But if you have multiple guns that are all cheap, and you can maybe dispose of them a little bit more easily because you have multiple ones, in a direct action roll, it's going to be a little bit easier for you to operate without such a huge risk. And even if we're not going to go through ballistic testing to find out where this fucking, who owns this firearm and all that stuff, even if the Communist Party doesn't have access to firearm registration and all that shit, you can stash multiple firearms in multiple areas and operating areas that you're going to be at. You can arm multiple people for a Minuteman role, so that way you can focus on the main thing that you need to do, right? I also think what you carry on you for your everyday should be a very small caliber to be as clandestine and discreet as humanly possible. So 380s, 22s, even revolvers, some snubbies, I think those are relatively viable. I can tell you, as someone who pocket carries a revolver most of the time, yes, that's primarily how I carry. No, I don't want to hear shit about it. It's me. It's who I am. It's what I do. Pocket carrying a fucking 38 is relatively easy. And I may or may not have gone to locations in Illinois that have metal detectors that are functioning and been able to go and discreetly keep things where you wouldn't know where they're at. So, just saying, right? Not incriminating myself because I don't know where these places were. I don't know when these things happened. And you know what? I don't even know if I had it on me. Maybe it was just all in my imagination, right? Who knows? The point is, if there are ways to discreetly hide something during overt times, you know for a fact it's going to be that much easier when shit hits the fan, right? So, another plus of revolvers is, no shell casing, so you're not leaving a trace. There's a reason why Italian fucking mobsters use that shit for, up into the fucking 80s. Obviously, you can't suppress a revolver, and let's talk about suppressors briefly. This ain't the movies. Even a 22 makes a loud enough noise that if it's just you alone, okay, but if it's you in a group and, you're at a mall or something like that, that click, that's going to be loud. I'm not saying don't have a suppressor. I would say have a suppressor for your primary, which is going to be your rifle. If you want to have a suppressor for your pistol, cool. I personally don't think you're going to be using it that much because we're not, even though we are direct action guys, we're not hitmen. Okay. It is very unlikely you're going to go into a area that's heavily contested and go and be Agent 47, fucking dome them, and get out without getting caught. All right. That's very unlikely. You actually have just about the same level of chance of just doing that without a suppressor and just fucking booking it into a forest or a huge urban area and things like that. But if you want to do it, do it. That's another component that you need to worry about stashing on your body. And to be honest, I think that makes you a bigger target if you do get stopped. I think you're probably going to get laughed at if someone finds just a 22 on you and be like, all right, what are you going to do with that? Go fuck off. I think they're probably going to be very suspicious if you have a 22, it's got a fucking suppressor on you. You're going to be like, all right, man, how many squirrels are you fucking hunting today? Like, what's going on here? So, I think multiple handguns and potential multiple cartridges for clandestine carry are going to be a big component of DA guys. The reason I'm saying this is because I've heard a lot of different things, I've heard a lot of things from different channels that all basically are the same thing about having a 9mm striker fired high capacity. Yeah, all right, I'm not arguing with that. That is a standard you should have. But, and another reason why I'm saying you need to stay on the low end of price range is because I know it's not feasible. I don't have a lot of money. I only have money for maybe like a firearm once every 3 or 4 months. That's me having to save up to be able to do that. And that's for a decent level firearm. If I decide to buy a Sky or a High Point, I could probably afford that once every 2 months. So if I feel a need that I need to have multiple Skies, I could probably get like 6 or 7 throughout a year. I don't think I need that many. And I won't even go and say that as a DA guy, you need that many. But the point is, having multiple handguns is going to allow you to expand your mission parameters. It's going to make you look less suspicious if you just have this cheap little fucking handgun on you and you get stopped. And considering, everyone's talking about ballistics and all that shit, it doesn't matter. Like, if you can shoot a 380 accurately enough, it doesn't fucking matter. If you can shoot 22 accurately enough, it doesn't fucking matter. So that's one thing I am going to say about calibers. Obviously, there are some calibers that are more consistent in causing the impact you need for someone to stop. I've worked in the medical field. I've seen gunshot wounds. I know what they're capable of. I've also seen people get stopped with just getting hit with a fucking brick. It just depends. How much tissue damage are we causing? How much blood loss are we causing? Did we sever an artery? Or, there's multiple things that you can do. You don't always need to use a pistol. That's kind of what I'm good at getting at. But if you do use a pistol, obviously be competent with it. And that's one thing I'm definitely going to fucking say along with all the other people who are putting this info out. You need to train, okay? The reason, being a DA guy, you need to train even more so than a Minuteman is that Minuteman's probably not going to use that pistol nearly as much as you would as a DA guy. Because if you're doing direct action, yeah, you're probably carrying a rifle or a carbine or some variation of something because you're going to do work. You're obviously targeting something or someone, and someone or something is going to get in your way and you got to remove that obstacle, right? Sometimes these missions are going to be very slow to burn, quick to react, quick to leave. You're going to have to move yourself to a location, not necessarily staging area, just to even get to the operation. Getting there is going to take time. You're going to need to keep yourself discreet as possible. Then you need to act on that, and then you need to disappear even faster. There's going to be some missions where having a rifle is going to just make you stand out way more than anything. So that's why I said have a good combat pistol that may be for when you do missions, but I would personally leave at home most of the time. And then have these smaller, cheaper pistols that are just going to, end up where they end up. It really depends on the mission set. But it's something I think is a big distinguisher between a Minuteman and in a traditional role versus what may be coming on the horizon and what certain individuals may need to do. So, if you feel that my information is incorrect, please leave it down in the comments. I actually would like some dialogue on this because this is something I've been thinking about for a little while, and I can see some flaws to having multiple cheaper pistols. Obviously, they may not be as reliable. Cool, I get that. How much are you using them, though? Like I was saying earlier, you do need to train, and you probably need to train a little bit more with your pistol than your average citizen who's going to be a Minuteman. But are you really reaching a failure point of a cheap fucking pistol? Are you actively putting 5, 6, 1,000 fucking rounds into high point? Why? These are mission-specific items. As long as the first mag or two works, there's a reason I'm telling you to buy cheap. I'm not saying buy a bunch of fucking Glock 19s and, fucking parse them out. Like $500-600 per gun. Yeah, that's going to be a bit of a loss, especially when finances aren't going to be as easily attainable when things come, right? So, train with one firearm, one version of the firearms that you have. Use that as your test bed. Get good with that firearm. Your holds aren't different on a fucking handgun. The recoil management isn't going to be any fucking different from one high point to another. They all suck. Just, can you fucking line up? Can you shoot? That's it. You know what I mean? So that's the biggest downside that I see, that I acknowledge, is reliability issues. Also, depending on where you live, if you bought multiple firearms in a short period of time, they're probably going to be like, yo, what are you doing with that? We still have to keep these things in consideration while things are normal. So, but those are the things that I've been thinking about. That's what I've been thinking. The only other thing I guess I'll say on it is, how do you carry your pistol? You're going to have to get creative with it, man. If you're going to be in the DA role, like I said, you're going to be more likely to discreetly carry something that's, a subcompact or, perhaps in a lesser caliber. That's not always the case. I'm 6'3". I weigh about 210, maybe 215. So a certain full size I could probably, carry without little problems. I could easily discreetly carry a fucking 380. I know I've done it. So there is a lot of different options that are available to you if you keep your mindset open. But like I said, pistols were the first thing that I thought about because everyone's always talking about them. Everyone who's a normal law-abiding citizen, that's the first thing that they're going to go to. DA guys just got to think a little bit differently. Hopefully this rant kind of made a little bit of sense and I covered enough stuff. I might actually redo this video. I don't know. I feel like there's more stuff that I could go about it, but we're already at the 18-minute mark. So you let me know, guys. Stay safe. Stay tuned.